Okay, well, hello everyone. How are you? Today, I would like to introduce you to Kyndle Quinones. She's going to be talking to us today in our series of Facts, Not Fears, a series born from so much conflicting information out there. A lot of it has to do with COVID and changes that we had. So today we're going to talk with Kyndle. She's going to introduce herself to say hello, but this is geared towards first-time home buyers and specifically one program that lends itself specifically to you buying your first home. Kyndle, say hello to everybody and tell us who you are.
Hello, everybody. I am Kyndle Quinones. I am the branch manager of the Severna Park Primary Residential Branch, and I have been a loan officer for 19 years and counting. And I've seen a lot in the industry and ridden a couple waves in the industry. So I'm happy to be here to share the trials and tribulations that we're overcoming on a daily basis.
That's right. And the key is overcoming it, because even though as these challenges come at us every day, something different and new, we're finding solutions and ways to get through all of that, aren't we?
Yes, we are on a hour by hour at the moment, but absolutely.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I also wanted to introduce you to Andrea Lortangeli. She is the buyer's agent on our team who works specifically with buyers. So I wanted her to be on the team, on the call today, so that she can ask some questions specific to what she's hearing out there with buyers. So Andrea, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. Looking forward to a fun conversation.
Yes, indeed. Which let us start that conversation. So I wanted to ask both of you if you remember the first time that you bought a home and the excitement, the fear, and all of that that you had when you did it. Let's start with Kyndle. Kyndle, do you remember that?
I do, actually. I had just graduated college and I bought my first home the summer of, I guess it was 90, I'm not just something in the 90s. It was 98, I believe. Oh, bought my first home and it was a new construction. I know. It was a new construction, and that comes with its own benefits and trials. So it was, I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest. And I didn't really have any leadership and I didn't have a representation either. I just kind of went to the builder and it went from there. So what I do remember, it was pretty interesting and complex, but as a first-time home buyer, I just really kind of put my trust in the people that knew what they were doing and the professionals, and kind of rode the wave from there. I remember paying 2 points for 6% on a 30-year fix because I thought I was going to live there forever.
Wow. I know everybody thinks they're going to live there forever. And thank God they don't. We'd be out of business. But Kyndle, what you said was really important when you said you didn't know what you were doing, because what first-time home buyer does, that's the importance of this call. Andrea, tell us about your first time buying.
Yeah, the funny thing was I too bought new construction, Kyndle, and I used to work for the builder. So you would think, oh, this is a piece of cake. I sell homes every day. But when I bought my first townhome, honestly, I almost canceled twice because I started freaking out about the thought of having a mortgage payment over renting. And the sad truth is my sales price was $140,000. So you can imagine that was way back then, people, because I'm old.
You're really old.
But, you know, it's funny. I did it for a living and I had the same butterflies in my stomach and somewhat regrets that I did it after I actually signed the contract. So I kind of always think about that when I work with my first time buyers, kind of what they're going through, because I remember it like it was yesterday.
And you know, guys, that is so important, because what a big, huge deal it is for somebody. Sometimes they're young, sometimes they're older, but for somebody to buy their very first home, there's excitement, there's fear, there's I'm going to cancel, there's I'm going to throw up, all sorts of things going on. So it's important for a lender and a realtor to recognize, acknowledge, and own the fact that these people don't know what they're doing. And it's our honor and our obligation to walk them through the process from beginning to end and allow them the latitude to ask the questions that we hear. And it's important. So let's jump into it, Kyndle. Today, we're going to talk about a first-time homebuyer program designed for first-time homebuyers called the Maryland Mortgage Program. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I heard through the grapevine that they were canceled. Is that true?
So for the first question, the Maryland Mortgage Program is readily available, and it is something that I believe in, strongly believe in. I've been a part of that program for 5 years, I believe, 5 or 6 years and counting. And I'm actually at the gold level standard with the state of Maryland for the submissions of these loans. So the fake news is that the program is gone, but the real news is that most lenders, the majority of the lenders that were in, have pulled out of that program. So it's not necessarily the program is gone, it's the lender who was involved with the program has made the decision to stop offering that product. And that just that comes with, you know, those programs, if they have down payment assistance tied to them, just a higher risk. So that's definitely something that each individual mortgage company has analyzed over the crisis of COVID and whether or not they want to continue to participate in it or not. Primary residential is one that decided to stay in it so that we can offer that product to first-time home buyers that need it.
Okay. You had mentioned a gold standard rating. What does that mean?
So there's 99 lenders that are qualified to offer this product in the state of Maryland. And through the years, it has grown rapidly because they needed to compete. Each one of the lenders wanted to get in, so they had that portfolio product to offer. And there's only 2 lenders that are at the gold level standard in the entire state of Maryland, and we happen to be one of them. So what that means is that we have kind of a, I don't want to call it a fast pass, but kind of a fast pass to processing and underwriting over there because we know how to write these loans. We know how to submit them correctly. We know, I mean, typically our submissions with the Maryland Mortgage Program, the way we work is we actually get the file completely clear to close prior to sending it over to the Maryland Mortgage Program. And the reason why we do that is because we've got an underwriter right there that we can email, call, and say, hey, we've got one coming. We had 2 submitted last week and they both came back within a 48 time period clear to close. So on average, it takes about 2 weeks for those that aren't in the gold level standard to have the submissions. And there's a lot of listing agents that have been calling me saying, you know, they thought the program was gone. They don't want to accept a product, you know, a contract with the MMP on there. The Maryland Mortgage Program is called the MMP for short. And I just, you know, reiterate to them that, you know, this is something that I closed 78 of those loans last year. Got about over 20% of my pipeline has those loans in them right now. So it's one of those things that I take pride in knowing the product inside and out. And we do have the connections over there to I don't want to call the word streamline, but the process is typically streamlined.
Because they know that you know what you're doing, right?
Right, correct.
So to break it down for us, I did a little research, enough to make me dangerous, but what is the difference between a Flex program and the Maryland First Time Advantage program?
So the Flex program, so if you go to their site, which is something that we can add to the end of this webinar, but basically the Flex is for somebody that is a repeat buyer, which means if you sold your house at 10 o'clock on a Monday and bought a home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, you could qualify for that product. So you no longer have to be a first-time home buyer that is not deeded to a property over the past 3 years. So the Flex is that category. The first-time advantage is for specifically people that have not been deeded to a property anywhere in the United States over the last 3 years. So those are the 2 differences between those columns.
Okay, did I hear you correctly? On the first one, the Flex program, you could have purchased a home and you don't have a 3-year waiting period. You said the next day I could do it, or I do have a 3-year waiting period.
You do not have a 3-year waiting period. As long as you're not deeded at the time to a property at the time of purchase, then you're okay on the Flex product.
Love that. Love that, because a lot of people in our industry believe that the MMP program is first-time homebuyer program, but it doesn't have to be.
Rightfully so. It used to be for years, but they're ever changing with the products and programs. And they've got about 7 products in there right now. So that's also why it's beneficial to deal with a gold level member because we know them and we know which ones to navigate with the clients, whether or not we're kind of coming up to, oh, well, I remember signing the deed to my mom's house, but I never owned the mortgage. That was a deal stopper years ago because that client who may have been a first-time home buyer never lived in their own home, but was deeded to the property of their parents, would then automatically be disqualified. In this scenario, let's say they just got off the deed and wanted to purchase a new home within a matter of a month, they could with the Flex product.
Nice. That's really good to know. And there's a lot of benefits for a person to buy a home instead of staying in a rental situation. Andrea, I'm going to ask you to pipe in here a little bit, but there are, one of the big things is today's interest rates are so low that it makes sense to purchase instead of renting for a lot of people, not everybody. Some people should remain renters. There's reasons for people to remain in a renting situation. But for those people who do want to own, Andrea, give us an example, if you would, of a program today at today's interest rates versus maybe a future where the interest rates go up. Can you give us a scenario on that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think right now, actually, the market is being driven by the first-time home buyers. I think first and foremost, the rents are so high in the area, and the interest rates are so low that you can, in a lot of instances, own for less than you're paying in rent. So, for example, you know, today's mortgage rate's about 3.625. So on a $250,000 loan, it's about $1,140. That's your principal and interest payment. Of course, you have taxes and insurances that you add to that. But if you're, you know, paying $1,700, $1,800 in rent, basically your mortgage is going to be about that level and a little bit less. And then also you have a tax benefit on top of renting. So, you know, you have tax deductions when you're a homeowner versus when you rent, you know, so that $1,800 you're paying in rent, you know, it's basically like opening the window and throwing the money out. You're paying your landlord's mortgage and they're happy for the tax deduction. But when you own, you have tax deduction. So that can be, you know, $200, $300 a month, depending on your income, that you're able to write off every year as tax savings. So at that rate, it makes sense. You know, if you've got a stable income now, you know, we know everybody's a little worried about what's happening with their jobs, but if you feel confident, you have good job stability, good credit, you know, now is a great time to be a first-time buyer. I don't think it's going to get any better, as a matter of fact. And then just looking at that same scenario, say next year the interest rates go up just 1%, so 4.625. You know, you're looking at a principal and interest payment of about $1,285. So over the life of a 30-year loan, you know, it's like over $52,000 extra that you would be paying if the interest rates just go up by 1 percentage point.
Wow, that's great. That's
yeah,
really, and I don't know that people understand the power of the interest rates and how strongly they play into making a purchasing decision, because the other part of that is when a first-time home buyer decides to purchase a home, and they're competing, having these, you know, one of the things that we talked about, Andrea, is when you look at an interest rate today versus one in the future, the amount of savings and the amortization of that loan, that's really significant, where they don't have a write-off when they're renting a home. The landlord's writing that off.
Correct. That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Let's jump in a little bit then, Kyndle, to the program. What are the ratios for a program? Explain what ratios are, and then tell us what the ratios are, qualification ratios are for your program.
Okay. Well, it's the Maryland Mortgage Program. It's offered for across the board for the state. So 640 is the credit score requirement, which is great. There's a lot of people with different lending companies that are putting their own personal overlays on those credit score requirements, but they do go down to 640, both on FHA, which is the Federal Housing Administration, and conventional loans. So the credit requirement for that is, in my opinion, very fair compared to where the restrictions have increased over the last 2 months because of the default rates that we've been seeing with furloughs and forbearance requests. So, so the program, the credit scores are 640. The ratios will allow you, if you have higher credit, so if you have credit above 680, the ratio flexibility goes to a 50% debt to income ratio. And what I'm talking about, for those that you are watching that are new, so we basically take what your monthly obligations are. So we take a look at everything that's on your credit report, and we would count up the monthly obligation. So for example, you have a credit card that's $5,000, but the minimum monthly payment's only $25. $25 is what I'm using. So we take everything that we have on a monthly basis, we add that together. Then we then add a mortgage payment for the house that you're trying to purchase. Once we have those two pieces together, that's your debt. So that's what's going out. Then we take what's coming in. So you have a salary or hourly or however you're paid. We divide that by a monthly figure. So now we have that monthly, and then so that's your coming in, and then we take your going outs, which is your debt, and we divide the two of them together. So once we take that division, it cannot go greater than 50% if you have a 680 credit score or higher. If you have below a 680 credit score, you're capped at 42% right now with the product. So you can see the weaker the credit, the stricter they are on the guidelines for the debt to income ratio for protection of the liability.
Yeah, that makes sense in the protection for both the buyer and the mortgage company to mitigate any risk of going into default. That makes sense. Is home buyer education required for the MMP programs?
Yes, it is. And it used to be where you had to go to class on a Saturday for 8 hours and go through the class. And it took about 6 weeks to get into the classes because they were so booked up, but now we can do everything online. So we actually recommend that consumers do not start the classes themselves. We wait for us to get under contract and get into the loan application, and then we set you up with the online class that you're going to take. It's just a more streamlined, and it gives us making sure that you've taken the right class and you're not spending money on something that is not going to qualify for the program.
And so how long does the program take online?
About 2 hours.
2 hours, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a solid 2 hours.
Is there a time period that once you complete the program, you have X amount of time to make your purchase?
Yes, it's a 12-month time frame. So the certificate's good for 12 months.
12 months, okay. Not every lender can do MMP. You said there's 99 lenders that are partaking in this program. How does somebody find a lender that is both qualified to do it, they're allowed to do it, they've been blessed to do an MMP program? Let's start with that question, then I want to come back to a second one. How do they find out if a lender is qualified to do this program?
So when you go on the site, you can actually go into the qualified lending list, and it'll have a list.
Looking at the MMP site?
It's mmp.maryland.gov. So mmp.maryland.gov is the site. And you can navigate through that, and it'll say eligibility, and you'll just click on the eligible lenders, and it'll give you a list of who's eligible to do the financing for that.
And I will also say that just because they're qualified to do it doesn't mean they're qualified to do it. In other words, the company may have been blessed to do it, but the actual loan officer within that company may not do a lot. My example goes back to one that you said, Kyndle, where the MMP program everything was going fine. I was concerned about any delays as a listing agent. Was there going to be a delay as a result of having this MMP program? And they assured me there wouldn't be. And we were getting closer to closing, and he calls, "Oh, bad news, we're going to have a delay." Really, I'm shocked to hear that. Why is there going to be a delay? And it was because the mortgage company was blessed to do it, but that specific loan officer didn't do a lot of them. And when he submitted the loan program to MMP, he did it before conditions were met. So because there were conditions that were there prior to, that got a week delay. So it didn't have to be that way. Had we been working with a lender, a loan officer, specific that they knew the loan program, that wouldn't have happened. And I've had many, many successful MMP program closings that went out without a hitch. So how does somebody know, if we have buyers that are out there now looking at the MMP program, how do they know, or what questions should they ask to make sure that they are talking to somebody that knows the program? What kinds of things can they ask?
They just need to ask my phone number.
Good answer, Kyndle.
Yeah.
Up at the end of the call.
Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of backtrack a little bit. I was listening to some points that you made that are extremely valid and important. And one of them is, I remember speaking to one of the head processors over at the Maryland Mortgage Program, because I'm actually pretty good friends with a lot of people over there because I've been doing so many. They actually had me in on a roundtable discussion a couple years ago, asking what I saw on the field and if we needed to make any changes, if we were willing to do the renovation side, and as long as not get the renovations in on the DPA, it's too many risks involved. And but one of the major concerns that the Maryland Mortgage Program as a whole has is that people, and this is the words that they used, are gumming up their system. And what they mean by that is exactly what you just described. So people think they know the product, they're going ins and outs. I mean, I have loan officers calling me from other companies all the time, asking me questions about this product. And, share my experience with them and teach them, to navigate. However, when you're dealing with a bank that is, just got signed up for it, or maybe on that list, but way down on the list, it's because they just went through the credentials. I mean, anybody can take a test and pass, right? That doesn't mean that if you take your driver's test and you pass, that you're a good driver.
Right.
Same with this product. So that's why they gave us those standards on the levels that we're in. So they're platinum, gold, and, and so on. And the reason why is because that way we get kind of a different processor and a different underwriter. So they know that we're really streamlined and we're buttoned up really tightly. Now, that doesn't go to say that we haven't had situations where M&P has come to us and say, hey, listen, these files are coming in sloppy because we got busy at whatever point in time. And that's where they put in that regulation of making sure that these loans are cleared to close. We might be waiting for homeowners insurance to be, finalized, something along those lines, but everything else is in, because we do not want that file to go anywhere near the file again. I want it to be looked at. I want it to be cleared. And, the things that they're asking us for on conditional approvals once we submit something that we've already approved could be something like, give me page 3 because that's not legible, or have the buyer, sign this piece of paper. That's one of the, something that may be a submission that was missed. But that's really, my last one, I didn't realize fax machines were actually still a thing, but the fax got stuck. So when page 3 and page 4 got stuck, so they conditioned for me to send both page 3 and page 4, but that was the only condition we had for them to clear the loan. So I was like, okay, well, that's a technical error right there.
Did you ever see the meme that says 1984 called and they're looking for their fax machine?
Ding dong dong dong.
Okay, so now I have another question for you. What is the process? So does a buyer contact a lender first, call you and say, hey, I'm doing this program, or do they call the realtor first and say, let's find a home?
I would love it if they would call the lender first. I mean, if we could teach everybody that would just make everybody's lives, much better. And the reason why is because we need to make sure, A, they're qualified to purchase a home, and B, if they don't have any money, can we apply for this down payment assistance product? Are you eligible for it? Because there are certain criteria that you have to meet. There's income restrictions that they have. You got to check all those boxes. And that's very important for us. I mean, income, cash, and credit are what we look for. And if, you got a buyer that's just looking on online sites and saying, oh, I think this is pretty, let me just call the agent and go out and spend their afternoon with them. Not only is that a waste of time, but it's not safe, in my opinion. It's not something, if somebody is actually ready and willing and able, they're willing to take that step to get this pre-qualification process started to know, A, are they looking in the right price range? I mean, some people think that mortgages are $800-900 a month, and I'm not sure what house would ever be $800 or $900 a month unless you have a substantial down payment. So misconceptions can be misleading online. A lot of places have these tickler payments online with houses that are just so inaccurate. I was talking to a first-time home buyer last night, and they were looking at around $300,000, expecting the payment to be $1,100, and I just can't emphasize the importance of doing the pre-qualification process first, so that you have all of the knowledge, not just the letter. Anybody can get a letter. You can go online to bob.com and get a letter somewhere. But you really need to have the knowledge and the wherewithal on what are you going to spend? You know, what's the rate? What's the payment? How much cash to close do I need? I don't have that cash. Where could I get it? Could my agent negotiate that for me? What does that mean? So these are all things. And then that's why when I get clients that do not have the agent, I then say, okay, well, here's a skilled real estate partner that I have that I would like you to, you know, call so that you can be guided in the right direction and that knows this program and product.
It's good. And Andrea, what is your experience? So when you have people that call you, a buyer calls you and says, okay, I want to go see these homes or whatever, what is your first step or first recommendation on what you do prior to taking them out to see homes?
Yeah, and the number one step is always, always, always talk to the lender first. For all the reasons that Kyndle just stated. The Maryland mortgage program is great. And we didn't say this yet, but basically you know, as a first time buyer, you can qualify for $5,000 to use toward a down payment toward your purchase. But if you don't know, A, how much you can qualify for, and B, how much cash you're going to need to get in, first and foremost, it's really not a wise decision to go out and aimlessly look at properties, especially in the environment that we're in. So, you know, they want to make sure.
Doesn't it? People go out and they get excited about, is there a monster on this call?
I don't know. I keep feeling something. We're being attacked.
We were being attacked. Somebody's stomach is growling. Who is that?
It's not me.
Not me.
It's the dog behind you.
Yes, that could be. Could very well be. So, right, it sets them up for disappointment where they go out and they see a property, and some agents are willing to do that, to take them out without being qualified first, and it's disheartening because it's our obligation to protect our client, and one of the things that we do is protect them by not letting them fall in love with a house that they simply can't afford. So I think that's a really important step. And now circling back to what you and Kyndle both said, how much does it cost to get into this loan program? How much money does somebody need to get into the program, Kyndle?
Okay, so Andreas touched on a little piece, and that $5,000 has been around for about 10 years. So that's kind of an added bonus. But my favorite is not so much, because you can go, even with the Maryland mortgage program, let's say you have a whole bunch of money, but you're just, you've got a 640 credit score, FHA, and a regular FHA loan. The pricing is sitting at quarter risk because you're 620. First one's called the FirstTime Advantage Direct, and that has no down payment assistance tied to it. But today the FHA rates, I'm looking across the screen, is 2.875. So that would be somebody that just is looking for a lower rate that qualifies within the constraints of the product, where they're not being penalized for their 640 credit score on an FHA loan. So that's the first one. The second one is the FirstTime Advantage 5,000, and that's the one that Andrea, you were speaking of. So that's a $5,000 down payment assistance loan that does need to be paid back at the time of refinance or selling the property. And those rates are similar to the next one I'm going to talk about. So I do like the 5,000, but I think when you get into the higher level sales prices, because these do go up to the county loan limit. So county loan limits in interim.
You beeped out on that one a little bit.
$20,000. So $5,000.
Yeah, can you beeped out there for a little bit?
County loan limits, is that where I got lost?
Wait a minute. There's a lot of regurgitation. So you had beeped out. What were you saying about the $5,000 that needs to be repaid?
So that is called the FirstTime Advantage 5,000, and that is just a direct $5,000 loan. That's a silent second mortgage that doesn't have any interest, doesn't have any payment, but it does have to be repaid back at the time of sale or refinance. Okay. And those rates are similar to actually mimicking the next product. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. The next product that we sell a lot of is the FirstTime Advantage 3% loan. So that will act as basically a down payment assistance. So for example, if you had a conventional loan, the minimum down payment is 3% down. So you can get a 3% second mortgage to pay for your 3% down payment.
Wow. So zero money of your own then.
Correct. So that would then, going back to having an agent who knows this product to refer them to, so that they would not need a down payment. However, they still have to pay for their own closing costs. So it came down to a client that had, let's say, $1,200 in their bank account. Perhaps we would say, okay, well, let's get the closing costs by the seller by offering, you know, a full price offer or something like that. So that is a very popular product, which is the 3% loan. So it can be a very beneficial if you get up into the higher sales price loans, because the county loan limit's up to $520,000. So they used to have a grant. They still do. You'll see that they have a Flex 3% grant and a Flex 4% grant. And the grant was truly what a grant is. You did not have to repay it. And you used to be able to use it for your down payment and your closing costs, whatever you needed it for, and you did not have to repay that grant back. However, they changed those guidelines within the first quarter of this year and said that the grant can only be used towards closing costs. It cannot be used at all for the down payment. So that's where it has to be very specific on knowing the details and the ingredients of the consumer, so that we know which product and program to put them in. But relatively speaking, across the board, the 3% loan can be used with FHA and or conventional. So conventional requires 3% down. FHA requires 3.5% down. So if you were to purchase an FHA loan, you would only have to put 0.5% down with that product.
That's fantastic.
It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
The fact
and there's
that
no payment requirement on it.
Yeah. So you can basically get in for zero money buying up to $520,000 through the program.
On qualifying, just making sure you qualify for product and program. I mean, if you're getting up into the 500,000, you got to watch your income restrictions, by the way, because people that typically can qualify for 500,000 make a little bit of too much money. So, okay. And they do have the income limits per county on the site, and they happen to lower the income limit. It was last when they lowered them. So that's where another knowledgeable loan officer has to know that they're not in that county. I just had a request this morning to run an estimate. Now, Laurel, Maryland runs in 3 different counties. So it can be, you know, Anne Arundel and or Howard, I believe it is.
Yeah.
So
and PG.
PG County runs off the DC grid. So the county, the loan limits are higher. Anne Arundel is lower because it runs off the Baltimore grid. So this happened to lay into Laurel, which was Anne Arundel County, and the people could not qualify because they were over the income limit. So it's very, very important that you're working with an agent and a lender that knows exactly what's going on with these income restrictions.
Which is why bringing it all the way back again is to get qualified before you start spending time on houses.
Correct.
And each person has, so there may be a perfect fit for one program for one person, and it's a completely different program fit for somebody else because their credit scenario is different or their income level is different. So it could be different depending on the individual.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a very customized product.
Recap for me. Is there anything that I haven't, and I'm asking Andrea and Kyndle both, is there anything that I haven't asked that's going to be important for a first-time home buyer, or now we know a subsequent buyer? Anything that I haven't asked that I should be asking?
I get Kyndle. What are the income limits? Just to give people a general.
Counties. Mm-hmm. So Anne Arundel, I looked at it last night. I'm not going down to the dollar, but it's about 103,000.
Okay.
And PG County is 145,000. Montgomery County is around 145,000. That's for 1 or 2 people. If you can, you know, you have children. You can do 3 or more. So it is very specific to the county.
Okay. Yep.
But people that when you look at this product and program and you think about who would qualify for this, 103,000 on combined income is still a really good amount. So, you know, your public safety workers, perhaps your teachers could perhaps, you know, first-time home buyers are really, really good for this product. So, and there's also one other one I didn't mention, which we're really proud of because we've done a lot of them. And I think we were the first company in the state of Maryland to do this. What's called the Smart Buy program. And the Smart Buy program is actually a program that will allow you to purchase a home, any home in Maryland, and receive up to 15% of the sales price, not to exceed $40,000, to pay off your student loan debt at the time of closing.
Wow.
And that is a really cool product because it's a 5-year forgiveness program. So for every year, 20% of that forgiveness is gone. So up to 5 years, 100% it's over. So for example, let's say you had $37,000 in student loan debt and you bought a $400,000 home. You're limited and capped to $40,000. All of your student loan debt at the time of the settlement goes away. So now that person who had student loan debt that had to qualify with the payments of the student loan debt now qualify for a lot more home because they do not have the student loan debt hanging over their head to pay.
That's incredible. And in 5 years, they don't repay that. If they stay in the home for 5 years, they don't repay that.
That's correct.
That's incredible.
That's a great program.
That is incredible program.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing with us. Angie, do we have any questions?
No questions in chat. The only one that we did have was it credit dependent? And you answered that one already.
Yep, we got that one. Thank you. Credit, yes, it is credit dependent. You have to have a 640 is the lowest, Kyndle?
Correct. Now on the Smart Buy, it's 700. They want to make sure you have excellent credit on.
They're giving you $40,000 extra.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Hopefully I don't have any other questions that I have not answered that would be helpful. But Angie, if you don't mind putting Kyndle's information up, that would be fantastic. So that if you have any questions regarding this program, please reach out to Kyndle. She is obviously a master of it. The program is wonderful. So just to recap, we have an umbrella of an MMP program. Under that umbrella, there's several different types of loans that are out there that are more specific to what you need and your needs. So very detailed information that requires somebody less time on the internet and more time talking to a lender. So here's our information. My information is up on top for if you have any questions on the buy side, and Kyndle's information is obviously on the bottom portion of this screen so that you can reach out to her directly if you have any questions about the MMP amazing program that we've been hearing about.
Yep.
Okay, any last words before we say goodbye?
There was actually one more question that just popped up.
Sure.
And are you able to pay off student loan debt for colleges outside of Maryland?
That's a great question. Yes, it can be anywhere in the United States. But they have to be paid in full. So if you have more than $40,000 or more than 15%, whatever the allocated funds are for you, you have to come to the table and relieve the entire debt. So that's why we have to take a look at it and make sure it fits the box.
So for example, Kyndle, to be sure I understand, there's a $50,000 balance on their student loan. They have to bring $10,000 to the table and $40,000 will be forgiven or
Correct.
paid for. Let's say paid for, not forgiven until 5 years, but paid for at the time of closing.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being on the call. Kyndle, thank you for your time and talents. We appreciate it. Andrea, thank you for your insight, and we will see you all next time.
See ya.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.